The EMS Avenger podcast is sponsored by Zoll. At the risk of making you feel bad a little bit, it feels like that EMS has kind of chewed you up and spat you out.
It has. I try to, they call it dark humor or whatever. I try to take anything serious and spit it back with a joke, but it has beaten me up. I put my body on the line. I did high angle. I did confined space. I did SWAT. I've done the critical care thing, done the flight, done the offshore, just the movie sets. Yes, I've put my body on the line to take care of, the city, the people, and then moved to the state. And granted, that wasn't a physical job, but always somewhere, everywhere. Put everything I could possibly think I could put into EMS, I put into it. And I don't feel done, but I need to heal. And hopefully I'll come back at another point somewhere. Never know where you'll find me.
Well, I'm Jimmy Apple. This is the EMS Avenger podcast. I am here with Gavin Istre, and you may know Gavin from Nightwatch New Orleans, and that actually sets up what I want to lead off with, which is somewhere around a year ago, someone sent me a video that showed a paramedic who I was unfamiliar with on a show that I had not watched, having a patient who appeared to be in full spinal mobilization, and he was being questioned about whether or not he used an opioid. The video that I was sent depicted Gavin as being somewhat detached and unempathetic and uncompassionate and administering him Narcan punitively. And the video that I made in response to that became a very popular video within EMS. And Gavin, you took a beating in that video. What we have come to find out, and let me say also that after that video, I actually kind of reflected on what type of content I wanted to continue to make and had decided that that was the last time I would make a video like that, where I put a provider directly in the spotlight and criticize their performance. But you took a beating in that video, and you reached out to me and you told me some things, not only about that video, but about what it was like to work on a reality show in 911. So specifically in the video, tell me why you actually appeared to be unempathetic and a little non-compassionate and removed. What were the details?
Well, we can get into the editing on season 1 later. That became a whole issue going into season 2. They were shooting for more drama than anything. And I mean, was it a 30-minute response call? They took maybe 2 or 3 minutes and edited how they wanted to get a fan reaction. They weren't necessarily shooting for an EMS audience. They were shooting for a worldwide audience. And then, of course, your video, which educationally spot on, man. This is why I told you, don't take it down. Educationally, people need to see that. And if it hadn't been me, I probably would have had the same reaction everybody else had. But it was edited. A lot of those things that they put in there were, some of that happened after the Narcan. Obviously, I'm already 20 minutes into a call. We knew he had left the party. And I can speak on it because they do sign HIPAA waivers to be shown on the show. So he was well aware his stuff would be on there. And so was I. But they took some things and they piecemealed it to make it look like I was that aggressive. Most of what you see me tell him was after the Narcan administration. Had I thought he needed Narcan, even though we were pretty aware it was alcohol and some sort of opiate, none of his vitals called for giving the Narcan. So because he was involved in a vehicular accident, he hit a bunch of parked cars. He was unresponsive when they got there. I think he was like GCS of 5 or something. And he came to about a 12. And we have a medical director, an associate medical director that usually rides with a sprint unit. So she was on scene, fire boarded her. That was before we started our spinal board immobilization, to select the spinal immobilization criteria. So we couldn't remove him. He's already on there. I never agreed with spine board for certain things, neck braces. Just if you're going to slide him out of car, just put him straight on the stretcher. So I didn't want to give the Narcan. When the doctor found, you can hear Holly tell me, Beth found paraphernalia on scene. And I'm like, okay, still didn't think, but he was being trauma activated. So what they did not show was Beth come over the radio and order me a medical order, give him 0.4 Narcan, see if we can get his GCS up to deactivate him. and we'll just do a consult at the trauma hospital. He had very minor injuries. So what you see me is go, oh, now I gotta get up, walk across, grab the Narcan. I administered 0.4. You can see me tremoring a little bit. I do have essential tremors. Didn't bomb him with it. I did explain to him, even though he probably was incomprehensible and doesn't know what I was telling him. I was trying to explain to him what I was giving him. He did come to. We were able to deactivate him. And then I started talking to him. He asked me a question. I don't remember what the question was. Because we were talking about how his girlfriend was in the car, why he didn't allow her to drive, things like that. Again, I don't know what exactly he asked me, but my response to him was, because I don't believe you. And they pieced that thing together to make me just look so unempathetic. And I mean, you can see other episodes where I'm extremely empathetic. I do have somewhat of a flat affect, but I'm never unempathetic. I think the first episode, first call ever, you see me really tore up about a teen that was shot and died. And we knew his aunt, who actually worked for us at one point, moved to Grady in Atlanta. So she was on the show. She came in and we realized it was her nephew. But I'm always empathetic. I've never mistreated a patient or ever given anything punitively. So like I said, if I wanted to give him Narcan punitive, I'd have done it well before 20 minutes into a trip.
And this is some time ago as well, isn't it? What year was this around, do you think?
Let's see. We did the sizzle reel. We sold it to A&E. So this was probably around 2014. This is
2014. So we're talking 12 years ago. It actually was not uncommon to give someone Narcan with a GCS of less than 15 if they were a trauma activation for the exact reasons that you say. Almost a victim of your own success there of being on TV. So we'll get to that a little bit later. First, just give me a little bit of background, a little bit of a biography.
My background? Well, my dad was a police officer. My mom's a nurse. My sister's a practitioner. I was a police officer first, went to the Marine Corps. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. Did a lot of logistics for them. When I got out, I didn't know what to do. So a friend of mine told me, she said, what do you get when you put a police officer and a nurse together? Well, you get a nurse with lights, you become a paramedic. And they're a big family down here in EMS. They actually had the first ambulance service in the New Orleans area. I'll give a shout out to the Massera family on that one. Just like family to me. Took me in, taught me a lot. So that's how I got into that. And I honestly, I swore I'd never work within the city of New Orleans when I first got in. I just wanted to work on the outsets and those suburbs. But New Orleans hired me. And probably the best thing I ever did. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of rapport, a lot of camaraderie there, even though we didn't have a lot of workers. It was just tight knit. I miss the patient care. I haven't been on a truck in a few years, but I do miss the patient care and I miss the people. That's pretty much it. Got my 4 daughters, take care of them every day, and let my wife go do her lawyer thing now.
Speaking of New Orleans, we have a friend in common, which is the former medical director of New Orleans EMS, Meg Marino. She did fantastic things down there and is also doing fantastic things now. She has nothing but good things to say about her experience there, about the current medical director there and the current director there. She had good things to say about you as well. And she says, hi, I'll be having her on my podcast in the upcoming months here. In fact, we're going to record a few of them together. So
Meg is a sweetheart. We met when I got hurt. I went and worked for the State Bureau of EMS. So I was exam coordinator and compliance coordinator for the state, doing ambulance standards and renewing our EMT because the states are responsible for the EMT level national registry. So we revamped that, revised it, added a bunch of examiners, and then I was on the EMS for Children's advisory board through the state. And that's how we met. I met Meg, who was also on the advisory board when she was with Children's Hospital. And I got voted chair of the EMS education, pediatric education subcommittee, and she was vice chair. And I said, this makes 0 sense. I said, how about we let the doctor be the chair and I'll be her wingman. So we switched roles there. I've never met somebody so kind. So she's really big in the EMS. She loves it. And that was before she was with New Orleans at all. And when she got there, I rooted for her, gave her the best. And I think she's gone. I don't know what she's doing right now, but I do miss her. So
I want to talk about your experience prior to Nightwatch at New Orleans EMS, because I did a little bit of homework and found that you actually hold a record for the most overtime at New Orleans EMS. And I'm not sure if that's a bragging right. So I just want to get a little bit of insight into there, because it fits into the EMS culture perfectly, which is, the pursuit and the reliance on overtime, sometimes at the expense of our own well-being. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, I'll have to correct you. I think I still hold the record, and it's not just for EMS, it's for the whole city of New Orleans. Police,
Wow.
fire, and everything. It was something like 4,300 hours in a year, when your average is 2,000 for full-time work. That was 2013. I had a 1-year-old. I think our base pay at the time was 37, and I racked about 90 grand. And it was a lot. We had some people traveling. I'd pick up details. I'd pick up extra shifts. Just people call out. We had what's called a disaster list, and people hated it. You would
Mm.
think it's for hurricanes or, states of emergency, but it was actually just if somebody called out and they didn't have somebody fill it. So I would tell them, I'm off, just give me a call and I'll come in to help people who actually have their day off not get activated on this thing. And then there were times where you'd have these race details. So you'd have one from like 8 to 12, one from 1 to 5, one from 6 to 10. And people didn't want to come in for a 4-hour detail. So I'll stay the whole 15 hours, just jumping from race to race. I think I had 11 days off that year. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah, so when people say I'm a little bit burned out, I'll admit I burned myself out. I probably didn't need the money, but I was just trying to give my kid.
Anybody making $37,000 a year who has a 1-year-old needs the money. Yeah.
Well, I was doing okay. I probably could have cut back about half of that overtime, but I really enjoyed being out there. It's in my blood with my dad and my grandparents and my uncles, and we just run. My daddy put a really big work ethic into me when I was a kid, working since I was a kid. So I didn't mind being there, and I knew my kid was taken care of. So that's how that came to play. And I think I kept it up throughout the next year, till I went offshore for a little bit.
Would you do that all over again?
Yes,
Considering you would.
I would.
Okay. Do you think that's had any sort of impact on you at all, as far as maybe irrecoverable type parts of your personality or your ability to provide care or have compassion?
Yes, I would probably cut it back a little bit. You miss a lot of birthdays, even without taking that much overtime. You miss the holidays. And then you're basically exposing yourself. It's self-mutilation at a certain point, the things you're out there doing, and the amount of death in New Orleans and the gunshots and the violence and the trauma. You're just self-exposing. You're just exposing yourself to that even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of, obviously we all have some sort of PTSD with it, but mine is to the point where I'm pretty much a homebody at this point, and I'm constantly unaware. I avoid certain parts of the city. Almost anytime I drive through there's not a corner that I can't tell you what happened.
Sure. Yeah. We all have those stories when you serve an area for a certain amount of time. You're like, that's where I took care of that patient who got shot. This is where I woke someone up with Narcan. This is where a psych call I had happened right here. This person suffered a cardiac arrest right here. The city is just full of, it's made up of ghosts, basically, right? Of
Yes.
calls.
Most definitely. It does. You say you don't want to take it home, but it plays pretty hard into how you parent. What warnings you give your kids, what you try to keep them away from. But at a certain point, they have to make their own mistakes as they get older.
New Orleans is actually in the news right now. They made headlines when it was reported that they were not meeting their response times 71% of the time, which to me, it perfectly correlates with the fact that about 75% of calls don't actually require an arbitrary response time. What's your experience with the struggles of meeting that sort of arbitrary goal?
So that's nothing new for New Orleans. When I was there, we had 8-day trucks, 6 night, and 2 swings for 400,000 people. And all the hospitals are kind of clustered right in the middle of the city. And a lot of people think of the French Quarter only for New Orleans. They don't think about the parish that you have to respond to. And part of that parish is you're closer to a hospital in a whole nother part of the state, closer to Mississippi, than you are to actually get back to New Orleans. And they started training on the fire department in it, EMS, just to get some immediate, some quicker tiered response type things. And then Nightwatch boosted recruitment like nobody's business. So I was shocked that they still have these issues. I guess a lot of people are using it as a stepping stone to bigger things, or nursing or physician or whatever they want to do. But here's a big one. There's a charter in the ordinances that every call for New Orleans EMS has to be run ALS. Has to
Well,
be.
that's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon, but I think if they were able to revisit that charter and maybe drop certain calls and more properly triage their dispatches, then they could probably get some BLS units up there just to do a true tiered response system, or at least if you have that many ambulances just sitting there in the parking lot, go post them at some of the fire departments and have those trained, fire EMTs jump in for that quick tiered response. You would probably solve a lot of issues in certain areas like the East Lake Catherine area, Lakeview, some of those, the West Bank, where you can't really get the traffic, the bridge, I know the Chef Mentor Bridge, they had a semi-tractor trailer turn sideways, and just that blocked traffic for hours and put them back about 20 miles because that's the only way through. There's a few ways I think they can fix that rather than roll over. I know a few years ago they had talked about merging with the fire department. There was a time where they actually thought about disbanding New Orleans EMS altogether and giving it to a private service. And then Nightwatch, again, that show did good things, did some bad things, but it definitely helped them keep that third party provider in the city.
Yeah.
So the new mayor, Helena Moreno, wants to give me a call. I'm talking to go through some systems with her, but I think she's going to get it together. It doesn't help that they have that huge budget deficit right now, and they can't, they're in a hiring freeze, and they're not a hiring freeze, but they can't afford to pay anybody, and they can't afford to give the people they currently have a raise.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is that the service itself has its hands tied. Like, the practices tend to be. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's going to take more than New Orleans EMS administration to fix it. It's going to take City Hall, the CAO, the mayor to revisit the laws, so that way their hands aren't as tied to switch their type of response system.
It's at one point, I don't know if they're still doing that, but at one point I know that they were running everything to the hospital, right? Licensed sirens as well, right? Just to simply get everyone back in service.
Yes, expedite everything. We were
so it's funny. When the show was still airing, when Nightwatch was still airing, I remember being on shift at one point and walking through our day room, and the show was on, and there was a call that I think it was some sort of like panic attack type call. And as I was walking out, you see the doors close in the back of the ambulance, and then you see the ambulance take off licensed sirens. And I'm like, what in the world? Why are they running that licensed sirens, right? I was pretty active on Twitter at the time, and I put out there, I was like, does Nightwatch, does New Orleans run everything to the hospital, lights and sirens? And someone came back at me with a really terse reply, and we ended up kind of getting into it. And I didn't really think much of it until the next day when somebody said, hey, I heard you got into it with, now I don't remember the name. It was one of your cast members. He came at me hard on Twitter about that. And I was just like, okay, well, yeah, that's what you got to do.
Titus likes to defend us, man. There was an article Jim's put out. I think you read part of it, but that was edited, about me burning out and having the overtime. And Titus was at a convention and talked to me. He's like, hey, you don't know him. And he ended up editing it a little bit, but it didn't bother. Some things don't bother me until it's 80,000 of your viewers are like, he's a horrible medic and he is unsubtle. I'm like, hold up.
Well, I'm sorry that added insult to injury there. Let's talk about the experience with Nightwatch. So how did that come together?
It was interesting. So I had done some movie set work, and I think it was in talks with somebody, and this was well pre-production. This was just them floating the idea, and they had asked me what do you think about getting a few EMS people and we'll follow you at work and then at home? We want to see how you guys handle what you do at work and how you take it home and how you guys deal with it. And I thought it would have been a pretty good idea. But I said, I don't think you can follow me at work. You have to, you just go talk to the chiefs and the administration and get all that clear. That's a lot of red tape, man. So they did. I gave them the number. They went and talked to, I think it was Deputy Chief Flores at the time, or Chief Flores. They ended up saying, okay, we're not going to follow you home. We'll just come to your work and just do like a reality EMS show, kind of like Cops. So that sounds cool. So there were two crews. Initially, it was, excuse me. There were two crews. Initially, it was me and Dory Turnipseed and Frank Petta and Titus Tiro. And the sprint was Becca Holly. So we film a few things. They create a sizzle reel. They put it onto Vimeo and they sell it to a network, and A&E ultimately picked it. When A&E picked it up, Dick Wolf from Law and Order got involved. He was the executive producer. And he said, well, how about we do fire, police, and EMS and see how they all work together, and we can do some separate stuff like that. So they started working with that. And Frank Petta, the late great Frank Petta, was diagnosed with spinal cancer, and he had to be pulled. And since he got pulled, me and Titus were actually partners at the time. We worked day shift, 4:30 A to 4:30 P. Half of us didn't really work night shift. So they came to me. They were like, okay, A&E's here. We're going, and this was in the parking lot. This is the producers and everything. And it said, we had to replace Frank. Who do you want to be with? And I said, well, me and Titus are already did the sizzle reel. We're partners. Just leave me with Titus. And they went, oh, we put him with Dan Flynn. And I went, well, that's going to be an interesting crew. And they said, well, who else? And I spitball a few people. And they said, what about Holly Sherman? So Holly was the last minute ad, like last day. So they put me and Holly together. Obviously, I've been knowing Holly since, high school. We grew up not a mile away from each other.
It's interesting you say like they put me with and they put me with that. And you're talking about their production crew. Right?
Yes.
You're not talking about New Orleans EMS.
This is the production crew.
Like, how much power did they actually have?
Well, that was the problem with the first season and a lot of the editing. We had zero oversight. We had 2 trucks pre-rigged. They chose who they wanted. They interviewed a bunch of people to see who they would want to put on the show. And they basically...
And were these trucks part of the regular 911 rotation, or were they brought up for the show where there was like you would respond to select calls?
I think I know. So they were part of the original original rotation.
Okay.
And they would put us out first on code 3s, traumas, the good stuff that they wanted. They would send us first out regardless of proximity. And again, their editing, they had full power of editing. And then when they made a bunch of us look like dummies, the second season we had to sit down with administration and producers, and they said, we will clear any and all editing before you show it. So the second season, moving on, you could see a little bit more fluidity and better stuff. Because I think there was a septic guy that I picked up. And I'd checked that guy's temperature 8 times. He was tacky, 170, 200 tacky. Hypotensive, and I'm like, this got to be sepsis. The guy was sick last week. Got to be sepsis. He's all blah blah blah. But the tent wasn't holding, so I called the doctor, and they're like, cardioverting him. I was like, excuse me. I was like, because I was so far out, and I'm like,
sure.
When I got him to the hospital, his temp was 104. My thermometer was broken. So I was like, and everybody chewed me out for that one too. And I'm like, had they shown me a temp to take the temperature and what I was getting, they would have understood why I went to a different protocol. But
sure,
of course,
you'd be knocking out a compensatory measure by cardioverting them. Yeah.
Correct. And it was, so we fixed that issue. They switched a bunch of the supervisors, and you really don't see, like, it wasn't scripted, but a lot of it was prompted. So where I would normally just be quiet and typing, which you don't see in the back of the ambulance, is the producer sitting there going, say this, talk about that. Or when we're in the front going, talk about this. How do y'all feel about this? That's why that stupid baked potato thing came to be. What do y'all like to eat? I was like, what does this have to do with EMS, baked potatoes. So you can't see them, and then they're trying to prompt us into doing things and just trying to get us to talk, trying to get some B-roll and some action shots and stuff like that. The beignet thing, that was a big one. That was actually a funny story. This was first season. They're like, hey, what can we do? Go get some B-roll of y'all just in between calls. Holly goes, well, let's go to Cafe Du Monde.
Mhm.
I went, Holly, we're not allowed in the quarter unless we're on a call. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to call this. So she does. And I said, Holly, I'm telling you, the supervisor gets a hold of it. I'm pointing right at you. I will point.
Specifically, you're not allowed in the quarter.
Not allowed in the quarter unless you're on a call.
Why is that?
A standby. I guess I don't know why. There's something
Keep you out
about
of
the
trouble?
old buildings. Oh, yeah, you'll get in trouble if you're just running around the quarter. I guess it's because of all the alcohol and the architecture. I know there was something with using certain sirens with the architecture. We were actually rumbling and disintegrating the walls with the new howlers. So there was a lot to it. There was a lot messed up. The second season, I was working a 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. swing shift. Let me backtrack a second, Jimmy. So another issue we had, because initially when we started filming, it was like overtime shifts. We would do our normal calls, and then we come in and just add 2 units. And the series was supposed to give New Orleans reimbursement for our overtime, the ethics stuff, because we didn't get paid for the show at all. The ethics yes, we did not get paid. You cannot get paid for doing your government duties. We are government officials with the state ethics board. So
Interesting.
we pay for the just show. And so let's say we did a 5:30 A to 5 P truck. I come up at 5, get my truck ready, go 10-8. They didn't want to start rigging the truck until 7. So we'd have to go back to the station. Then they'd finish rigging up the truck at about 7. We weren't back on the streets till about 8. There's an hour of downtime for a service with only 6 trucks up. Then they wanted to be done by about 3, 4 o'clock. That's why it was like 8 to 4 or something they filmed. So we'd have to go back to the station, down the truck, let them dismantle the stuff, and then go back 10-8 to run more calls for another 2 hours. That was a lot of time people are just running. And then this is Hollywood, so they were mandated to take lunches. A few of the crews went with them. I never did. I was like, y'all get in that little van you got following us, go get your lunch and meet me back wherever I am. And I wasn't going to do that to the other providers that were running and picking up our slack.
Right.
So the next season, I'm 2P to 2A. I'm with Teddy Anderson, and we're sitting down at that meeting I previously told you about. And I said, look, this is how it's going to work. You're going to put me at 2 o'clock in a pre-rigged truck. You can just hook up your little expensive cameras. At 7, you meet me where I'm at in your little van. You hook up all the cameras. And then at 2 o'clock, when I'm done, so are you, unless it's hot and you want me to stay over running some more calls. That worked out. It mitigated the downtime for the ambulance and kept the calls rolling. There were days, I think it ended up a 15-hour shift. I ran 27 calls. So they couldn't keep, and there were calls that they'd film that they didn't want to air, which I thought were more educational and positive than just constant gunshots and overdoses and trauma. When we do the medical diagnosis and the investigative patterns and the detective work that goes into it, and it's just there's not much to do for the patient. Cancer patient. Well, I didn't know she was a cancer patient. We'll go in, weakness, starting in the legs, been happening for me. Now it's general malaise and lethargy. Get in there. There's an oxygen tank in the corner. There's a green little hospital folder. This lady is pale as a ghost. I let my EMT start doing the vitals, asking the questions. I'm listening to what everybody, that's kind of what I do. I just listen to everybody talking. And when I get that trigger keyword, I'm like, what was that? So I asked the lady, I said, you do chemo and radiation? She says, yeah, I have cancer. I said, okay. Have you ever had blood infusions, transfusions from this? She said, about, I guess it was the 2 months. And I checked her little sclera, pulled her eye down. I said, I think your H&H is low and everything. Like, sure enough, that was what the iStat showed. And my EMT partner, how did you figure that out? You didn't even ask a single question. You touched the patient. I said, you were doing what you were supposed to do. I can see the monitor. I'm hearing your questions. I'm hearing what everybody's saying. And I'm looking around the room at what might be important. And I showed her everything, and they filmed me teaching my EMT about this. I thought that would have made for good TV, at least if you're looking for an EMS audience, but
sure,
it wasn't exciting enough for them.
Yeah, when you are in the field for a certain amount of time, there's visual and auditory clues that you can seize upon immediately. For some reason, I can just tell when somebody is an unmanaged diabetic. You look at their skin and you're just like, this person I'm 100% positive is diabetic and not taking care of themselves. And they are like probably 3 months from losing a limb or something like that, you know? Just certain things that certain people can key on. As far as the relationships that you have within an EMS service, was Nightwatch intrusive into that? Does that affect that?
What relationships would you be?
Just your relationships with your coworkers? I mean, any relationships really, but I mean, I'm sure being self-aware for 12 hours is personality changing, and there can be a certain amount of jealousy when people get attention, you know? So, I mean, I'm sure that has to be disruptive in one way or another.
There was some jealousy from other crew members who wanted to be a part and did everything they could to try and get onto the show. I know a few of them did eventually get onto the show. I didn't let it go to my head. At the end of the day, like I said, we weren't getting paid for it. I'm not an actor. I'm a paramedic. They're there enough that I actually became less self-aware of these cameras and just started doing my job and I got better footage at just doing that, being less self-aware than constantly hyper-focusing on being watched and being recorded. I was worried that if I did something wrong, that the administration was going to come down on me.
That's something that I thought of too, was I don't even know how an EMS service allows that. Like it is absurd to me that any EMS service would want all of their patient interactions recorded. Even if the patient, you know, signs a HIPAA waiver, it just seems like the liability there is just absolutely massive.
I could tell you there was a huge liability. When we first started, they were coming into the ER, continuously filming as we handed off, and every hospital had a problem with that. They did end up coming to some sort of agreement with Tulane where they could film the ramp. Like hospitals didn't even want them on a ramp. So Tulane came up with something where they could film on the ramp. That's why you see Tulane so much. It was almost advertisement for them. And they say they weren't going to use it punitively. We got talked to a few times about what were you thinking here? I'm like, don't know. The guy was in my face talking to me. He's trying to get me to do something. And then some things just became inauthentic. There was a guy I dropped off. This was when they were still filming in the hospital. Dropped off this little girl. They filmed the whole thing. And the daddy came up to me with a very genuine hug. Hugs me. I was like, you know. Then the crew's like, oh, we missed that. Do it again. I had to hug this guy 6 times. It becomes not genuine, this authentic, you know. I'm like,
Yeah.
how many times you want this man to hug me? Like, now it's not real anymore. You should have caught it then. There were times where they were filming, and I told them, I got to be careful how I say this one. It was a gunshot victim, GSW, chest, young lady, and her family are responders, and her other family are very well known in the music scene down here. And I told him, when I realized who, I said, stop filming. You'll never, no, not happening. Get out.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people wouldn't sign the HIPAA forms. So that's when you were allowed to film in the back of the truck. So they were like, well, we can get around this. And I'm like, how do you expect to get around this? And they were like, leave the back doors open.
Because then you're in public.
Then I'm in public, and they would film from the street. They got sued over that one.
That's shady.
That was very shady. I didn't agree with it. I wouldn't do it, but you can see, I think there's a few clips on the show where they did that.
And you're mic'd up so they can hear you, right?
Oh, I've unplugged many times to
Yeah, because despite the fact that you're in public, I would imagine that a court of law would say that if you're not able to hear it in public as, you know, an individual in public, then amplifying that, you know, is still kind of like eavesdropping into a space where it would otherwise be somewhat private.
Yes.
It's wild to me to be in a position where you are in a field that, you know, it's a field that it's very well respected, but we're not very well compensated, and we have to burn ourselves out and kind of burn our candle at both ends. And you know, did that with all that overtime, and then you get this amazing opportunity and you can't get compensated for it. That is such an EMS thing right there. Were you able to at least leverage that into some endorsements here and there or appearances?
I didn't. The others did. That's where they went to these conventions. I think they got their hotels paid for. A few dollars here and there. I know Dan went got an agent. That's how he ended up on Rescue 911. I didn't leverage it at all. I was Like I said, I never let it really get to my head. They would go to these conventions. They asked me, people would ask, where's Gavin? And Titus went, this ain't his thing. You'll never see him at these. Autographs were always weird for me. I didn't mind pictures. People want to take pictures. That's fine all day long. Autographs were weird. You want my signature? And you trying to steal my taxes? So I had to come up with a different one. Before the show aired, they told us all, if you do not, you need to change your name on Facebook. And if you do not have an Instagram or a Twitter, you need to create one. And not, whatever. Boy, they were. I mean, the first episode, my Facebook ended up with, I can't tell you how many thousands of followers. So I started the Instagram, went up to 60, 70,000 followers. And I'm the guy that, I'm getting messages. Let me talk to all these people. It's impossible. It is possible. And I was getting yelled at for not responding. I'm like, that's enough. I'm deleting this.
Yeah, I mean, we both kind of have similar experiences. I'm a very recognizable face in EMS now, and I go to conferences and get invited to speak at all these different places. You know, I'm still active in the field, so I'm a pediatric and neonatal critical care paramedic, and so we go out to all these hospitals in the Atlanta area, get these kids and bring them back. And, you know, if there's a bunch of EMS crews at the hospital, they all tend to recognize me. And I carry stickers on me to hand out, but a lot of people do want me to sign the sticker, and that is very surreal. You know, in my head, I'm like, you know, celebrities sign autographs, you know, and it's just like, what do you want to do with this, you know? But, you know, it's fine.
Yeah, you're not really gonna flip it for much money.
No,
I did sign an autograph. I'm not really big into like sending things. There was one dad. I got a letter, and it was addressed from St. Jude Hospital, and I got a letter in like child handwriting, asking for a picture signed to this little, I think she's 7. And I did that one. Obviously, I signed that one. I did a little private note, sent it back thinking, I hope this is real. And the dad sent me a picture of his little girl holding framed in her hospital bed at St. Jude. That was probably the only time I've ever mailed a picture signed to someone. That was that. So
yeah, it can be difficult keeping up on the engagement. I get a lot of DMs and emails, and I try to get to all of them. I will get emails and DMs, and some of them are easy enough to reply to. Others are very lengthy, and it is very difficult to try to reply to, you know, a wall of text. People are asking all these questions and, you know, want all these answers and advice and things like that, and it takes a lot of time to reply to an email like that. And so it is an impossible task to keep up on all of it.
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how the other guys did it, especially with the amount of fame that Holly got. Being a last minute addition, becoming probably the most popular one there. I was like, they actually had to take I was already gone. I know they took them off the streets because people were calling 911 hoping they would show up.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they actually had to take them off the street and maneuver them up through administration so they could, we weren't bombarding and using the 911 abuse stuff.
Well, where are you now? What do you have going on now?
I'm disabled. I'm practically retired. I'm trying to heal, man. I go through the list. I've had neck fusion, 2 levels, 2 left shoulder surgeries, 7 lumbars, including 2 fusions, both hips replaced, femur rod, and I need a left wrist replacement.
Are these job injuries?
Job injuries. That all my orthopedic except the wrist is pretty much paramedic.
At the risk of making you feel bad a little bit, it feels like that EMS has kind of chewed you up and spat you out.
It has. I try to, they call it dark humor or whatever. I try to take anything serious and spit it back with a joke, but it has beaten me up. I have, I put my body on the line. I did high angle. I did confined space. I did SWAT. I've done the critical care thing, done the flight, done the offshore, just the movie sets. Yes, I've put my body on the line to take care of, the city, the people, and then moved to the state. And granted, that wasn't a physical job, but always somewhere, everywhere. Put everything I could possibly think I could put in the EMS, I put into it. And I don't feel done, but I need to heal. And hopefully I'll come back at another point somewhere. You never know where you'll find me.
Well, I hope you do, man. And I really appreciate you spending some time with me here and wish you the best of luck in getting back on your feet. This has been the EMS Avenger podcast. This has been an interview with Gavin Istre, and we will see you on the next podcast.
Thank you, Jimmy, for having me.
Thank you.
Dark clouds rising black and gray, screams of chaos where we lay. Lights are flashing, calling the brave. The